It's a Star Wars show, and I'm your host, Jon Justice. Thank you so much for checking out another episode. Be sure to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this on YouTube, and follow the show on whatever podcast platform you happen to be listening to. If you want to email me, TalkShowNerd@gmail.com. We're going to be in so much trouble. Let me get the title right. Let's talk about this week's penultimate Skeleton Crew episode.
This is not going to go the way you think.
No, not really. All of my theories suck. Now, I have one last one before we get into the final episode of the Skeleton Crew coming up next week. But somebody had shared a theory that I actually liked quite a bit, and that was that the opening scene of episode 1 was actually foreshadowing what was going to take place at the end of the show, meaning that we were seeing something that was going to take place much later, and we would be revisiting that moment when Jod Nanawood opened up the door and there was supposed to be treasure there, but that wasn't the case. And I almost shared that on the podcast, and I'm glad I didn't, because that turned out not to be true. So, as I've been doing with recent episodes, I grabbed an article, this one from AV Club, talking about this week's episode, and then I'll share a bit of my thoughts. I'll comment as I work through the details of what transpired in this week's episode. And I love this show. It's fantastic. It really is amazing Star Wars. I think people are a little bit torn in going fully all in on loving it because of the shorter run times. I think people have a bit of an issue because it's geared around kids. I was talking to a Gen Zer at work who's a Star Wars fan, had just started watching it, and this was the vibe that I was getting from him. Almost like he couldn't admit to himself that he was enjoying it. But I love it, and I can't wait for the series to be finished and then be able to watch it front to back without any interruptions, much in the same way that I've enjoyed Ahsoka, which is by far my favorite live-action Star Wars Disney streaming series. And Skeleton Crew's up there. It's up there with those first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian, and certainly up there with Ahsoka as well. I'm hoping that they tie the final episode into the greater Mandoverse that Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau have been creating. And this gets to what my theory is relating to what may transpire. But let's work through this article. Skeleton Crew enters its darkest chapter in an ace penultimate episode. After some good quality bonding last week, the kids finally get a brief moment to just be kids and play around on their shiny ship. And I love the Onyx Cinder now, which they say in the episode is an antique. I just absolutely love the design. I think it's a cool ship and way better than the original freighter version of which this ship emerged from. Wim isn't having it, though. Now that the adventure is almost over, he realizes he'll have to return to his boring old life at the Mint. He doesn't want to do it. He may regret the life-threatening dangers of the trip, but not the adventure. The difference is that he's not alone this time, for the journey has also changed for the rest of the crew. Even Neil says that he's glad he went on this adventure, despite almost dying half the time. Now, Neil isn't exactly right about that last part. He almost dies all of the time, including this time, because the crew gets captured by Brutus and the pirates in the moment they get into the proximity of the tractor beam. Even after they manage to trap Brutus using the loading crane, which was the giveaway to Jod Nanawood, when he gets close to the Onyx Cinder, it just gives Jod an opportunity to shoot his first mate in the face and take control of the pirates, who Jod is convinced love him, although Brutus is sure that they just love the plunder, regardless of who leads them. This time we get to see a different side of Jod, one who puts on his theatricality mask in front of the other pirates, talking a big game about treasure and acting like a captain, but who is himself in front of the kids now, unfiltered, dangerous, annoyed, angry, and willing to go all Anakin on these younglings, even if he doesn't get what he wants. And I love what they've done with the Jod character, by the way. Him donning the mask on the Onyx Cinder in this episode that we saw him wear in that first episode it really harkens back to Kylo Ren, and especially Kylo Ren reforging the mask again for The Rise of Skywalker. And I love these moments in separate Star Wars content where they draw in these similarities. Like George always says, it's like poetry, it rhymes, but it lends more credibility to the actions of previous characters in other series, again, like Kylo Ren donning the mask. Kathleen Kennedy in documentaries when they were discussing Kylo Ren in the making of The Force Awakens and saying maybe the mask helps him become evil. I don't think that there's any redemption now for Jod Nanawood, wherein for a while I thought that there was. It turns out that he is indeed kind of the villain and has been all along, even if he slowly has been warming up to it. After receiving a transmission from their parents, Wim decides to go recklessly on the attack and try to overwhelm the pirates, what I just thought was comical. Failing miserably, of course, he does confront Jod, however, and says that the ship belongs to them because they found it first. The Jedi-turned-pirate dismisses the kid's ramblings, but it turns out that there is a force in the galaxy almost as strong as well, the Force, the rule of claimsies, which I thought was great. According to SM-33, the Pirate Code states that a captain may claim command of only one ship at a time, and Jod had taken command of the Brutus frigate. Sadly, the pirate covers Wim's mouth right before he can claim the Onyx Cinder, though not before Fern calls unclaimsies on Jod's claim and declares the ship is for kids only. It turns out to be a valid enough claim in SM's book, bending the rules just enough to allow him to give Jod a sock to the face he truly deserves, destroying his helmet, by the way, and beat all the pirates up before kicking them off the ship. This is kind of ludicrous, the article says, silly ruling that makes Skeleton Crew such fun to watch, as it treats the world of kids and their words seriously. Also a bit of a hearkening to the Pirates of the Caribbean series, and the rules are more like guidelines as it relates to pirates. Do we need Ahsoka to suddenly call claimsies on Thrawn's fleet when they inevitably meet in the future? No, but the fact that the show allowed a group of kids to outsmart the pirate crew with claimsies is utterly delightful. The Barrier is a series of massive electrical floating stations generating huge electricity, frying anything that gets close around Ad Atten. Tact Renaud figured this out and stole an emissary ship on his way to Ad Atten, which he then dressed up like an armored hull to make it look more piratey. The giant toxic Maelstrom planet hid the much smaller one of Ad Atten. Unfortunately, the good times are short-lived for the kids because Jod was on board all along. Right when SM-33 gets ready to give the pirate another ass-whooping, Jod pulls his lightsaber, decapitates the poor droid. I'm pretty sure that's it for SM-33, although we know just because you got stabbed or sliced doesn't mean you can't come back, especially if you're a droid. They arrive on Ad Atten to the sound of an automated message from the Supervisor, voiced by Stephen Fry, which I thought was interesting, and I'll get back to that in just a moment. Welcoming the Republic emissary. It looks like there hasn't been one in ages because people in the plaza seem very surprised when a little park opens up and reveals a landing platform under the ground. Jod convinces the security droids that he is the emissary and must have the kids kept at his side for their safety. The Underground Mint is in fact a massive facility hiding 1,139 volts. By the way, I thought that was interesting because THX 1138 is the go-to, being George Lucas's first movie, and they went with 1139, which I thought was funny. I almost feel like they did that intentionally just to have people like me go, I'm surprised they didn't do 1138. Be that as it may. Each with a truly unbelievable amount of shiny gold credits in those 1,139 volts. The mere sight of which makes Jod laugh and cry from joy. The episode ends with the kids' parents arriving at the vault and hugging them, a tender moment that gets interrupted by Jod arriving and igniting his lightsaber threateningly in a scene that distorts everything we know about the imagery of a Jedi and its rules. Now, some stray observations from the AV Club. The parents pull an ET extraterrestrial going into the woods at night to create a communication buoy that can reach the kids. The device even looks like ET's ship. I was going to notate that on the show as well. Neil's mom is a badass for not even hesitating for a second before trying to run away with the device the moment that security droids arrive. Goodbye, Brutus. You became a classic Star Wars character this week. You did absolutely nothing, but you looked cool doing it. How much do you want to bet that Neil or Wim remembers that there is a giant gun on the roof at the school? Meaning there is probably at Akron. Meaning there's probably one here too. Exactly. That was Chekhov's gun from that episode on at Akron. Though he only showed up for a second, Neil's dad just joined Quamir as one of the hottest characters in Star Wars. Look at those husks. All right, so that wraps up what the AV Club had to say regarding the episode. Over much too quick. I can't wait to get to the end of this series. And again, I want to see it in its entirety so that I can get past the short run times and just enjoy the entire story, which I imagine is going to run at a pretty quick clip once we actually have the completed series and you can binge watch it, because the episodes are packed full of action. They fly right by. I watched the episode twice when it came out on Wednesday. I had to watch it a day late, and neither time was I bored whatsoever, especially the second time around, because they pack so much into these episodes. So with the final episode being done by the show runners and writers, specifically John Watts, they're going to want to, go out with a bang, right? So how is this whole thing going to wrap up? I have no idea. Jod is the villain here. I suppose the kids need to play the role of foil to Jod, and we still don't know who the supervisor is. So here is my prediction and what is probably not going to happen, but what I wish would happen. So first off, the arrival back on Ad-Aten and the droid accepting that Jod is the emissary was incredibly similar to what takes place in Attack of the Clones. When Obi-Wan goes on his investigation, he arrives on Kamino. They think he's Sifo Dyas. He tells them that he's not, but they do say that they've been expecting somebody. And then at one point, they make the comment that, do you wish to see the clone army? And Obi-Wan Kenobi goes, that's why I'm here. So with that, I can't help but wonder if we're seeing something similar at play as to what Ad-Aten is really up to. It could very well be, right, and it seems like it is, the Mint, where they're making these Republic credits. But we also know these Republic credits are not found currently in circulation among the populace, as demonstrated in, I believe, the second episode of the series, when they arrive at the pirate port and everybody is so shocked. And how big those credits, while they lasted, played in the storytelling throughout the episodes. But they're still being made, which means they're still being distributed to somebody. The New Republic is corrupted. We know this now. We saw remnants of the Empire embedded within the New Republic in the Ahsoka series, the bureaucracy of the New Republic in The Mandalorian. Somebody is sending emissaries from the New Republic to Ad-Aten, and they are leaving with credits. It's the whole reason why Jod was able to go down there in the first place. They said, once an emissary arrives, we go right to the Mint for offloading. Dave Filoni said a long while back, prior to, I don't remember which season it was of The Mandalorian, but it might have been the second or third season. Might have even have been the first season, that The Mandalorian would eventually tell the inception and the link to the rise of the First Order from the sequel trilogy. This is what I hope is going on. I'm hoping that what we're seeing here is the money that is going to be used to go and build the First Order that we end up seeing in the sequel trilogy. And that somebody within the New Republic is undermining and funding all of this to take place as this army is built between the time of the Skeleton Crew and when The Force Awakens occurs. What I'm also hoping happens, which I know is not going to happen, Stephen Fry voicing the Supervisor. It's kind of a big deal. He's very well known in cinema, especially when it comes to films out of England. I'm certainly familiar with him. The movie that comes to mind is he played the British talk show host in V for Vendetta. I think of the name. So he's a very well-known actor. I believe he's actually done the voice work for the Harry Potter novelizations. Now, whether or not he ends up playing the individual that we see as the supervisor remains to be seen. What I would love to see in terms of the connection is not only this mint being used to fund the creation of the First Order, I would love to see the supervisor turn out to be Snoke. Given the outfit, and I'm making a loose connection here, but just follow me. Snoke's wearing that gold robe in The Last Jedi. And he has to be somewhere at this point in time. We know now it's canon that Palpatine created Snoke. We know this. That being said, I don't think we have a canonized version of when he created Snoke and how long he's been out there. The Emperor is dead. So at this point in time, or at least he's off trying to recuperate, he's over on, presumably he's on Exegol, but still an incredibly decrepit state to where he needed to use Snoke to basically run his new empire via the First Order. So Snoke has to be somewhere. Now, where that would go at the end of the story, who knows? If they're not aware that Snoke is a bad guy, you could introduce Snoke as the supervisor in this, and they could sort of off to the side not make it completely aware to the cast of characters. Say after Jod and the pirates are defeated, they go to finally meet the supervisor. The supervisor is Snoke. He thanks them for their efforts. And we end up wrapping up the story. We, the viewer, understand, oh my gosh, they're funding the First Order, whereas the characters in the show are completely unaware of it. Plus, you have a foundation where you can wrap the show up and Skeleton Crew could just be a one-series show, or, as the showrunners have said, they have an idea for a second season of Skeleton Crew. You have a groundwork that's laid out. Either way, you can move forward. Now, again, I fully expect that none of that is going to happen. I would just love to see it happen. What do you think? TalkShowNerd@gmail.com or leave a comment up on YouTube. Could the supervisor actually be Snoke?
I need someone to show me my place in all this.
N Black writes this week. Still very happy with Skeleton Crew. I would happily recommend it to anyone interested in Star Wars. I also saw and was impressed by Eggers' remake of Nosferatu, and I couldn't help but think, what would he do if he were to direct a Star Wars film? I doubt he would even be interested in directing a Star Wars movie, but I think his skills could yield interesting results if it were to happen. What do you think? No, I absolutely agree with you. His attention to detail is unmatched right now in cinema, to be honest, and working within a Star Wars universe and knowing sort of the box he has to play in, I think he could do a fantastic job. And let me also take this moment to remind you, in case you weren't already aware, there is other content available from me if you search for The Jon Justice Show on whatever podcast platform that you listen to this show on. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see clips that I post as there, which is why you need to go and hit the alarm and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I did put up a dueling movie reviews of A Complete Unknown and Nosferatu. So if you haven't listened to those and you listen to the podcast, again, look for The Jon Justice Show. This is separate from my weekly radio show on Twin Cities News Talk. It's just called The Jon Justice Show. Subscribe to that podcast and you'll find regular bonus content outside of my radio show and these podcasts there as well. Lastly, if you like to read science fiction, check out my science fiction series, EMBARK. A stargazer, a headstrong and gifted pilot, a hardened former military officer, a tech geek, and a ship whisperer. When it comes to motley crews, the Anniversary has most starships beat. But as a ruthless corporate madman, bent on tyranny, attempts to exploit an apocalyptic industrial accident, it might fall to this ragtag band of unlikely heroes to save Earth's evacuees from annihilation. If they can survive each other first. Treat yourself, a friend, or a family member with sci-fi, written for adults, but great and age-appropriate for those 11 and older. Pick up Embark Book 1 today. There are 7 books in all in the series, available in ebook, Kindle Unlimited, audiobook, paperback, and hardcover on Amazon.com. If you like your sci-fi space opera to be epic, filled with really cool technology, a bit of romance, and a lot of action, Embark is perfect for you. Again, head on over to Amazon.com and search for Jon, Jon Justice, and Embark. I'll be back next week to wrap up with the finale of Skeleton Crew and hopefully a handful of your emails, TalkShowNerd@gmail.com. Until then, I hope wherever you are, Happy New Year. You're happy, you're healthy, and you're safe. And I'll talk to you then. Bye.
The Force will be with you, always.
My nerd world.